Joke here. So, like the title or description says, talking about digital ads versus your regular print ads. So, um, what ends up happening a lot of times, at least what I personally did when I first got started, and it might be different now just because of it's been like 5 and 6 years. So, digital advertising is definitely more prevalent. Um, but what a lot of times happens is like when we first started a business, we basically just, whatever the other companies are doing, like we just do that, right? The main competitor or the oldest competitor, let's say that in this, it's not even a competitor, the oldest company in this area is Burger Fence. And there's a few other ones. There was a Michi Fence as well. And basically, when I would go and when I was starting my business, I would get the Money Mailer, the Clipper magazine, and stuff like that. And if you're not familiar with them, they're basically the Money Mailer was this envelope, and it would have these separate sheets of paper that would advertise different businesses. And the Clipper was basically like this discount, like magazine type thing. So you flip through it, and there'd be all these like different companies, and it'd have the coupons in there and stuff like that. So in the beginning, I saw the other companies do it, so I'm like, I should do that too, because obviously in the beginning you want to like have customers call and so you can book a job, and even after when you're, even a few years into it. So I called both places, and the Money Mailer, I think back then was like $300 for an area. So it went to like 10,000 homes, and like, their main selling points were basically, each sheet is its own advertisement. So you're not, competing with another competitor. And because you goes to like 10,000, homes at $300, like you're only paying like 30 cents per home. And you're like, oh shit, like that's dirt cheap, right? And they're like, you can't even mail, something to, these individual pieces or places for the low cost that we're offering. I'm like, okay, this makes sense. So I called the Clipper, and they wanted like $2,500 a month, and there was like a 4 6 month commitment and this other shit. And but it went to like 40,000 homes and everything else. So like the cost was obviously higher for the Clipper, but in my mind it was a higher perceived value. But at the time I couldn't afford $2,500 a month. Like it's absolutely ridiculous, right? So I did the Clipper. So I do it, and like I spent $300, and I think the first time I had like 3 or 4 calls, and then maybe I booked a job, and then I did that for a few months, and like I'd get a handful of calls. But then after, that was during the springtime, but then in the fall, I would do this stuff, and like no one would call me, like no one. I might get one call, maybe. So I paid $300 for a call, and so I did that for the first year, and afterwards I'm like, this doesn't make any freaking sense. Like I'm not paying all this money, $300, and back then it was a lot to me, right? Because I was broke, and so you know I did that, and then I waited till the following spring, and then I was like, okay, I'm going to start doing the Clipper. Like this makes more sense to me. They had a really good salesperson and everything else, so they basically talked me into it, right? So again, it was 2,500 a month, and so what would end up happening is like during peak season, during the spring season, like I would get like 60 and 70 phone calls from this thing. So that's pretty good, right? So paying 2,500, you're getting 70 calls. So I'm paying like, I don't know, like 34, $35 a lead, right? Which isn't bad. Like, because for digital, like you might be paying about the same amount, like 25, 35, something like that. If you have someone that's doing your Google ads and they don't know what the hell they're doing, or you're doing on your own and you're making mistakes, like you literally could be spending like 75, 100, $150 per lead. But the problem with these things, right, is like I said in the beginning, that these things are discount mailers. Okay? So when I was first starting out, I was already the cheapest, so it didn't really matter. And then of course they're like, "Oh, you got to put a coupon in there for like a free gate or $250 off, and shit like that." Well, I was already cheap to begin with, right? Because back then I didn't really know my numbers. Well, I knew like because I was doing everything myself, I know if I charged 5,000, the materials were like 4,000, like I was making $1,000, but it would take me like 3 and 4 days to get the shit done, right? I didn't know any better. And then on top of that, like I'm giving a discount. Well, the problem with that is that people are going there specifically looking for a discount, right? And if you haven't noticed, and if you're still on the low end of the price range, like for in your area, so if everyone's, you know, the top competitors or the top people that have been in business for a while, that, you know, with the biggest companies that can't afford to give shit away for free, you know, if they're charging like, you know, $8,000 and you're charging $7,000, well, it's easy to book jobs that way, right? Because you're already $1,000 less, and then you're giving the like $250 off on top of it. So what ends up happening because they're doing this, I guess I'm going, is that now, sorry, intersection on the road. So what ends up happening with this stuff is when you are charging less than everyone else and you're dealing with cheap people all the time, they take more of your time. Like, they call all the time, they bitch about every little thing that they could possibly complain about, and it's a nightmare. Along with that is that, again, like when we used to do jobs and we're only making like $800 a day compared to now when we're making a minimum of $1,500 a day in the worst time of the year, but then going closer to 2 or even 2,500, like you're making 2 and 3 times more. So you're dealing with 2 to 3 times more people than you would with, and you know, if unless you started charging more, right? And like I said, they take more of your time, so they complain about everything else. So you're dealing with 2 to 3 times more people, and then these people are complaining and calling you 2 to 3 times more than the people that are paying more, right? And it doesn't make sense. You would think that the people that are paying more would complain more, like they'd be more, you know, OCD-ish and everything else, but it's not the case. It's just not, and it's crazy. So anyway, because you're dealing with 2 to 3 times more people, and because they're complaining 2 to 3 times as much, you are dealing with legit like 6 to 9 times more headaches than you would if you would end up charging more. Okay. The other thing to remember is, like I said, with the discount mailers, and like if you're doing paper advertising, I've done billboards, like I've done it all, like you name it, because I'm a person, like I don't care about making mistakes. I don't care about throwing money out the window. Like I have so many freaking packages. Well, I've been better about it lately, but like used to have so much shit coming from Amazon that like I would waste money in my personal life. So why not try to waste money in my business life and potentially make more money, right? So I did all, like everything. Like, so I did print advertising. I never did newspapers, but I did the billboards. What else did we do? Bus shelters, you know, for the bus stops and stuff. So I literally done it all. But what you're going to realize is a lot of times when you start advertising, you're advertising in the springtime because that's when you have money and that's when you're not afraid to spend money. Like, that's just what happens, right? In the wintertime, everyone like clenches up and they're not spending money, right? Well, when you're advertising in the springtime, people are going to call anyway. Like, they just were, because like it's springtime. Like, they want to get their fence and everything else. But then in the off season, the calls drop off drastically, okay? And the reason for it is because they're going through a discount mailer, right? They're looking for the coupons for just to see what the hell's out there. They're looking for like, you know, I still use it just specifically for the coupons for the like the food places, right? For the restaurants and shit like that. So that's why it doesn't work a lot of the time, is because when you're advertising in the off season, they're not looking for your services. Like, they see fence, they're not thinking about fence, so they're flipping through it, right? And this is where digital advertising is so much better. You know, not only advertising, but of course I always talk about Google My Business and SEO and like that kind of stuff as well. So the reason why it works better is because, one, if you're not, like, one, you shouldn't be discounting your shit. Like, that's number one, because you're just opening yourself up to deal with people that are paying the ass. But the other thing with the digital advertising, Google My Business, SEO, and stuff like that, is that they are specifically looking for the fence company or looking for the power washing company or whatever your business happens to be. You know, when they search for that shit, you end up showing up. Okay. Now, on the flip side, with digital advertising, it's no set cost, right? Unless you're using like Angie's List and stuff like that, which I personally have never used because of the like everyone complains about it, right? And I probably should just try it anyway, but I've talked about this in another video. A main reason why I don't do like Angie's List and stuff like that is because one of the competitors in my area, he has like 1,000 reviews on Angie's List. There's no way, in my opinion, and plus he charges less than me. So between the two of them, people trust Angie's List, right? So on top of that, he's got 1,000 reviews and everything else. So he's got like this built-in authority. So like for me, if we both go and, you know, quote that job, Like I'm charging $1,000 more than him, and he's got 1,000 more reviews than me. Like it's not going to end well, so I don't do it. So anyway, with digital advertising, the thing you have to be careful about is that it's very easy to waste a shit ton of money, especially if you don't have things in place, right? So, what are things that you can put in place? Well, one, you can set the amount that you want to spend per day. So, if you want to spend, 20 bucks a day, 50 bucks a day, 100 bucks a day, like whatever it is, like that's, you can set that limit. But just realize when you're doing Google Ads, if you say that you only want to spend 50 bucks a day, what they do is you will not overspend $1,500 per month. So you'll have days where you're spending like $200 and $300. Not that you want to, it's just because that's what Google's going to do to you, right? The other thing to worry about when it comes to digital advertising, this is specifically for like Google Ads, is that you should be updating your negative keyword list like all the time. So what is a negative keyword list? A negative keyword list is anytime someone searches for something that you don't want to show up for, you would put that in a negative keyword list. So then the next time someone doesn't like search for the same shit and you pop up. So it's a way of you only showing up for stuff you want to be like actually showing. Because you might see, like if you're doing like vinyl fence or something like that, if someone is typing in vinyl fence panels, and you're not supplying material, you're only, installing, you don't want to show up for that shit because like they're going to only be looking for the panels. So that's something you can do, right? Or the other things that you can look at with Google Ads is that you can actually, like for me, Camden, New Jersey, obviously is known in the country of being a, like, not a place that you want to live, right? Because the crime rate's high, the property values are low, and everything else. So before I started adjusting stuff, in the very beginning, we would show up there, and these people that are that are looking for a fence company in Camden, and like we would quote a job, and it would be like $5,000, but their house is worth like legit $20,000. Like, how are you going to book jobs when a fence is going to cost 25% of like what their property for? It's just not going to happen. So anyway, this was just going to be a quick video. In my opinion, long story short, digital ads are way better than the physical ads, just because again you can target who you want to, like basically where you want to work. So if you want to work in like near me, like Haddonfield's a very prosperous area. There's a lot of money there. So like if I wanted to, I want to advertise there. So I get specifically pick Haddonfield as a place to advertise. So that's one thing you do. The other thing, like I said, is you can specifically target for the stuff that you want to show for. So like when you're doing the paper, the magazines and shit like that, you have no control of who's going to call you. But like if you only want to show up for vinyl fencing or residential fencing, well, you can structure that with your digital advertising. But you can't do that with the paper advertising. So you have all these random people calling. So like you might get 70 calls coming in, but only like 30 people may want what you have and or offer, and then maybe only out of the 30 people, 5 people are willing or able to pay what you want to charge. So again, it may seem like it's cheaper with paper advertising unless you're using the Clipper, which the Clipper is just, it's crazy expensive. And I've tried it a few different times in a few different ways of just billing and leads and stuff like that. Like I've tried just building out an ad for $2,500 a month and sending people right to like my salesman so I can get their lead, their information, and then I can basically remarket them over and over and over again. That's the other thing. When you're looking at digital advertising, it's not even so much just the original ad, but then you can basically follow them after the fact, right? So what you can do is people that are, oh my God, they're about to hit that car. I'm gonna get off, but it's raining and like people are not driving too great today. I'll talk to you guys.